Welcome back. We have breaking news overnight on this day 5 of Israel's war on Iran and its nuclear capabilities. The IDF claiming it has killed Iran's newly appointed wartime chief of staff, the most senior military commander closest to the Ayatollah. He was only at the job 4 days because he took over for the leader who was there and eliminated by the Israelis. President Trump maintaining on Truth Social Tehran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and that Iran should have already come to the table to make a deal. The president also warning, quote, everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran, as he leaves Canada's G7 summit early last night to monitor the Iran-Israel conflict from Washington. Joining me now is Ohio Congressman Warren Davidson, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for being here this morning. What is your reaction?
It's always an honor, Maria. Thank you. Look, my reaction is very basic. Friends in Israel, I wish them safety and success. Iran has been an incredibly destabilizing force in the Middle East. And, you know, I think the other part is we want to make sure that this stays a conflict between Iran and Israel, and it doesn't expand to include the United States or anyone else.
So what do you think the U.S.'s next move should be here? I mean, obviously, Israel is trying to eliminate Iran's capability to make a nuclear bomb, and they've eliminated and diminished much of the infrastructure. Should the U.S. be doing more?
I mean, we're not at war with Iran, so, you know, Iran's not a good country. Israel and Iran have been at war for a long time. Sometimes it's been not direct, where, you know, Iran isn't actively attacking Israel or Israel isn't actively attacking Iran. But Iran has funded, you know, they funded the Hamas attacks, the 10/7 massacre. They fund the Houthis, they fund Hezbollah. I mean, they're a clear threat. I mean, if the case is to be made for war, then we should commit to a war. But that hasn't been made to Congress. This is an effort, really, I think, an extension by President Trump to reach a peace agreement that involves Iran giving up their nuclear weapons. President Trump has been very clear through his whole candidacy and his presidencies, both, that he doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. I think some of that kind of line, though, blurs between tactical support for Israel, they're our friend, and tactical participation. So I think, you know, if we're seen as actively part of the war already, then it certainly hinders the negotiations in a lot of people's mind.
So do you think we can trust Iran in these talks? If we were to have talks on nuclear buildup, can we trust that, in fact, they're not close to building a weapon? The other day, your colleague in the Senate, Roger Marshall, told us that Iran was 1 week away from total enrichment for a nuclear bomb.
Well, I think it's a fair point that no one would trust a negotiation right now when the people negotiating with the United States were just killed by Israel. So the negotiators, fair point, maybe they should have reached a deal in 60 days. Yeah. But I don't know anyone that would want to sign up to be the lead negotiator if you're going to wind up on a hit list. So I think there are a lot of problems to negotiating anything in Iran. You know, when President Trump's first term, he negotiated with Kim Jong-un and created sort of de-escalation. Maybe it wasn't a clear state of war, but it looked things were escalating between North Korea and South Korea. And we sent THAAD missile systems over, but President Trump sent a bill. He's like, look, who's benefiting from this? South Korea, they should pay for it. Yeah. We're doing all this at great expense to the United States already to provide support. I think President Trump's position is similar with North Korea as, well, we don't inherently trust them, but we can build mechanisms that can build trust.
Congressman, let me move on to the big, beautiful bill and the Senate Finance Committee unveiling the text of President Trump's bill yesterday. It includes major tax reforms and even steeper Medicaid cuts than the House called for. Other differences include an increase in the child tax credit and a lower cap on the state and local tax deduction back down to $10,000 after the House voted to lift it to the $40,000 cap. New York Congressman Mike Lawler called the Senate proposal dead on arrival, warning that he won't vote for the bill if the SALT cap remains at $10,000. Will you vote for this bill?
Well, I certainly hope so. We could swap my vote for Lawler's. I had a hard time supporting it in the beginning because, you know, you expanded all the things that are really expensive fast, and like SALT. I mean, we went from $10,000 and to 20 to 30, and it still wasn't good enough. We got to 40 for people making almost $600,000 a year. And that means that people from other states like Ohio or low tax states where they're going to pay more federal taxes, and the people that are paying big expensive taxes in New York and New Jersey, California, wherever, they're going to pay to their state government and local governments and not pay in at the federal level. I think it's wrong to do that. And it's very expensive in the first 3-4 years. I mean, the other thing, though, is the Senate's also expanding the Green New Deal. They're taking longer to get rid of it. This is a bill that had 0 Republican support when it passed under Joe Biden, and now all these Republican senators can't get enough of it. So we had a hard time getting those things turned off in the House. It wasn't good, and now the Senate's talking about expanding the Green New Deal there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. What about the other? By the way, Congressman Lawler will be on this program tomorrow with his reaction, and you were one of only 2 Republican no votes on the big beautiful bill. I want to get your take on the other changes. Are you poised to vote yes to this bill at this point, and how many no votes do you expect in the House?
Well, I certainly hope we can get all Republicans in the House and Senate on board. But look, I get guys like Mike Lawler, they're negotiating hard for their state. The reality is there are no blue state senators. So it makes sense that the Senate would want a less expensive subsidy to blue states. And look, the reality is we do need to, keep our majority in the House. I think we felt like, okay, we could accommodate something for these blue state guys like Mike Lawler and take it from 10 to 20. That's what we were trying to do last Congress.
Right.
They came out with a draft version that was 30, and that still wasn't good enough for people making up to $400,000 a year. So I think these guys are being unreasonable, and it's costing a lot of money in these first years. I mean, even the most optimistic pro-growth tax models, not CBO, not even Wharton, which is normally a decent model, everyone says that this increases deficits in this Congress and in this presidency. So even if you say, yeah, we're going to take into account high growth and tariffs, it still hurts deficits now. And it's because you take forever to turn off the Green New Deal, or don't ever in some cases, and you give these gifts to blue states and a couple other quirks like that. I think the Senate's moving in the right direction. So I hope everyone can get on board with the final product.
Right. I understand, Congressman, but are you willing to take this so far as to blow up the president's agenda? What is your problem with this bill? Is it debt and deficits? Are you going to vote yes on it?
Well, I didn't vote on it the last time. The problem is, as I said, there's only one Congress we control. It's the one we're in. And frankly, we control this presidential term, and it never spends less money. I could live with the fact that it spends a little more money and it grows deficits for a year or two if by the end of President Trump's term, it's back below the current level of the deficit. The current level of deficit isn't sustainable. That's why we've campaigned. That's why we pushed DOGE. That's why Elon Musk is saying this is going the wrong direction.
Yeah,
we're trying to save money.
So you're willing to blow up the president's agenda. You're willing to blow up the president's agenda then? And
I'm not voting for a bill that grows deficits, Maria. I'll vote for it if it spends less money by the time President Trump's term ends. And we don't even control that Congress. We don't know who's going to be in the next Congress. So promising to cut spending in the future doesn't cut spending. Back in 2011, when John Boehner, my predecessor, was Speaker of the House, they passed a bill that said it was going to cut $2.1 trillion. And that was even by the conservative CBO score.
So where do you cut?
We only had $14 trillion in debt. Now we're almost $37 trillion in debt.
Congressman, where specifically do you want to cut?
I've given nearly $2 trillion worth of cut proposals that people aren't taking.
All right, Congressman, thanks very much. We'll be watching you work on this. Obviously, Warren Davidson joining us this morning.